This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with a story that once again has Winnipeggers talking about police use of force. Manitoba's police watchdog is investigating the case of a man who died after an interaction with officers. The chair of the Winnipeg Police Board says it's another reason why body-worn cameras need to be examined. We have a warning for you. Some of the video in this story is graphic, and you may find it hard to watch. The CBC's Alana Cole reports.
This memorial is for a 35-year-old man who died over the weekend following an interaction with police. Videos shared with CBC show pieces of what happened. Witnesses say they believe the man was tasered. This video was taken by Mason Cabistra. He started recording after he thought he heard a taser go off.
Looked completely limp, but they were sitting there grabbing his arms, holding his leg, pinning him as hard as they could. And then that's what I was like, oh, I was like, no, this is way more than just what they need to do. So I rushed to grab my phone, and as I grabbed my phone, the other cops started showing up.
Winnipeg Police and Manitoba's police watchdog haven't said whether a taser was used. On Sunday, Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe said police were called to the apartment complex just after midnight Saturday, and that a woman told police her boyfriend was intoxicated, she was with her 3 children, and worried about safety.
There was a lot of yelling, a lot of commotion in the background, and reports of windows being smashed. Officers were dispatched to what was considered to be a domestic situation on Fairlane Avenue at 9 minutes after midnight.
Smythe says the woman called police again from another suite, saying the man had fallen down the stairs from the 2nd floor, was lying in the snow. The Independent Investigation Unit says a brief use of force encounter occurred while the man was handcuffed, that he became unresponsive while taken to a police car. Smythe said police called an ambulance. He later died in hospital.
Right here, the whole thing took place.
Christina Bauer was also a witness that night. She says it's left her shaken.
It didn't need to escalate that way.
She used to feel she could call 911 for help.
And I don't feel that way anymore. I don't think I would call them if I would have to be in a position where it was like life and death for me to call, because now I'm scared.
We asked a former police chief from BC to take a look at the videos. One point he makes is there isn't a video showing everything that happens from the time police arrive. He says this is an example of why body-worn cameras are important.
The minute they get out of the car, the way the body-worn camera policies are, and it's consistent throughout North America, they must ensure their body camera is turned on. So we have audio and we have visual of the second they interact with that individual.
Marcus Chambers, chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, says body-worn cameras will be discussed with the Justice Minister at a meeting next week. Winnipeg police say an autopsy on the man who died was expected to happen today. His family has asked for privacy. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Now to another big story tonight. Police have made an arrest nearly 17 years after a Winnipeg woman was found dead outside the city. RCMP say DNA evidence played a key part in leading them to charge a man in BC with murder. CBC's Cameron McLean joins us now live to tell us more about this. First, Cameron, who was the victim?
Her name was Crystal Saunders. RCMP say she identified as Métis, and she was 24 years old when she died. A police officer saw Saunders getting into a vehicle at Sargent in Sherbrooke in the late evening of April 18, 2007. Next morning, her body was found in a ditch near St. Ambrose, around 76 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg.
And who have police charged with her death?
Police have charged 42-year-old Kevin Charles Q with second-degree murder. He was arrested in Surrey, BC, and is expected to be transported to Winnipeg in the coming days. Q is from Winnipeg. He went to school here. He has also lived in areas in Ontario, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and BC. Police linked Q to Saunders using DNA found on her remains in 2007. In 2014, that DNA was uploaded to the National DNA Databank and matched to Q. But Superintendent Rob Lawson said more investigation was needed to charge him with Saunders' death.
With any case, we have to continually reassess and resubmit sometimes our DNA profiles until it meets a threshold that's substantive enough for the lab to be confirmed to say it's a match. That's the first step, and sometimes that can take years.
Police are asking anyone with information about Q and any other crimes he may be involved in to come forward.
What are you hearing in terms of reaction tonight, Cameron?
Well, people are just learning about this, but police described her as a mother, a daughter, and a friend to many. Members of her family had been expected to be at the announcement earlier today, but they did not attend. Police have asked the media to respect their privacy. One thing we learned today is she identifies as Métis. Representatives of the Manitoba Métis Federation say this has had a big impact on the community.
Part of it for us is trying to see how we can help the family and be part of, because this is not only going to affect the family, it's going to affect our nation.
A sacred fire will be lit for Saunders at the Mamawee Centre tomorrow at 5 p.m. Janet?
Thank you, Cameron. That's the CBC's Cameron McLean reporting live tonight. A 5-year-old boy was killed yesterday in Winkler. Winkler police say he was tobogganing down a snow hill and onto the street, a residential bay. They say a driver backed out of a driveway and didn't notice the boy in front of his car when he drove forward. The driver stayed at the scene. Neighbors performed CPR. The boy was taken to hospital, but he died. Police are still investigating. No charges have been laid. A Winnipeg man has been sentenced for causing the death of a 59-year-old grandmother in October 2021. Cynthia Duncan was a financial planner, a person described as loving. She died in a crash with a driver who'd been using meth and who sped away from police. As the CBC's Josh Crabb reports, family members say the sentence he received is too light.
Family members walked out of court clutching photos of 59-year-old Cynthia Duncan shortly after the man who pleaded guilty in her death got a 7-year sentence. Duncan's stepdaughter Sarah says it doesn't seem fair.
There's not really a sentence that we would ever be satisfied with. We have to live with this for the rest of our lives, and we don't get any more chances. He's going to get out, he's going to get another chance.
33-year-old James Joseph Wheeler previously pleaded guilty to criminal negligence causing death, flight from police, and driving while suspended. He was behind the wheel of the BMW that crashed into Duncan around noon on October 4th, 2021 on Provencher Boulevard. Court heard Wheeler had used methamphetamine and was speeding away in heavy traffic after being stopped by Winnipeg police. Facts Duncan's daughter, Michelle Duncan Kenny, finds unsettling.
There's nothing that could make this right. Like, my mom is always going to be gone, and no sentence would ever change that.
Court heard officers pulled over Wheeler because the plates on the BMW were canceled. He stopped, but then sped off, swerved, and lost control, going an estimated 105 kilometers per hour in a 50 zone. The BMW hit a median, launched into the air into oncoming traffic, and landed on Duncan's vehicle, killing her instantly. She was on her way home from her job as a financial planner for lunch with her husband. Duncan Kenny says it was difficult going through the birth of her son without Duncan by her side.
She never got to see him, and he's never going to have a grandmother. That is just not right.
When asked by the judge if he had anything to say, Wheeler stood up and said he'll be in a sea of regret for the rest of his life for deciding not to stop for police. He told the court and Duncan's family he's the only one to blame for his actions. His words meant little to the family. They say Cynthia's death weighed heavily on her husband, Alan. He died this past June and was unable to give his victim impact statement in court, so his daughter, Alana, read it.
It's just kind of another slap in the face that he didn't get to be here to read it himself.
The 7-year sentence was a joint recommendation. With credit for time served, Wheeler has 3.5 years remaining on his sentence. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Hundreds of people gathered to remember a Winnipeg restaurant owner last night. With lit candles, they filled the parking lot of the Cork and Flame restaurant on Portage Avenue. 51-year-old Kyriakis Voyajakis was assaulted and killed Wednesday in this same parking lot. 38-year-old Curtis Ross Dale Bozick has been charged with manslaughter and uttering threats. Police now say he had pushed Voyajakis to the ground and continued hitting him until Voyajakis passed out. He was taken into custody that night. Voyajakis died in hospital a short time later. His brother, Mike Voyajakis, spoke at the Vigil last night.
My mom is really struggling. You know, my mom's going to bury her son, her youngest son. And it's not fair. And nobody ever deserves to die alone, and my brother did. Nobody deserves this senseless violence in the city of Winnipeg. And I can guarantee you that you're going to be seeing me and more of me in the future. And I'm going to make sure that the city makes change. And I'm going to make sure that the people and the families of the city come first before anything.
Police say the man charged had encountered the restaurant owner in the past near the restaurant. As the province's largest school division struggles with chronic absenteeism, another organization is working to get students back in class. Inner City Youth Alive works with hundreds of youth, many of whom don't go to school regularly, if at all. As CBC's Brittany Greenslade reports, one woman spends every day trying to change that.
It's a call she makes dozens of times every morning.
Hey, good morning. Are you coming to school today?
Sarah Traver works her way through a list of roughly 40 kids she's trying to get to school today. Sometimes they answer, often they don't. Then she hits the road.
So this morning we have 15 kids that have said they are ready to start pickups. So we are going to go and start doing that.
Traver works with Inner City Youth Alive. The organization provides programming for low-income and at-risk youth in Winnipeg's North End.
Minus 40 or plus 30, we're out there trying to wake them up, just motivate them.
They spend hundreds of hours each month trying to address chronic absenteeism. She says many of the students they work with have a regular attendance, often showing up once a month at best.
There could be addiction, they could be needing to take care of siblings, they're struggling. We've noticed a lot of kids that are at like a lower reading level. So we have like grade 9s who are currently reading at a grade 3.
Many of the kids aren't going at all.
Currently, I'm trying to get a kid in school right now who has not been to school in 2 years, and he is in grade 8.
It's those missing students the province and divisions are trying to track. A 2022 provincial report found that 6,500 students, nearly 4% of Manitoba's K-12 population, were unaccounted for at the start of the 2020-2021 school year. One of them was Leland Moody.
It started back in my first year of grade 9. Started going for like 2 weeks, then out of nowhere, they just deemed me not able to go to school anymore since I wasn't officially a student there.
The now 17-year-old says there was an error with his paperwork and he wasn't registered at school.
And so then I just stopped going to school for like months and months.
Instead, he stayed up all night playing video games and sleeping all day long. The longer he stayed away from school, the harder it was to try to go back.
My anxiety is basically like people are mainly going to judge me and all eyes are mainly going to be on me.
It's taken more than 2 years to get him back full-time. He'll finish grade 10 this year and dreams of being a graphic designer for video games.
Mainly it shows me that like you got to start going to school more, and once you graduate, that's when you can finally decide on life.
Hope you're doing well.
The people at Inner City Youth Alive helped get him there. But it's not easy. 60% of the students they work with are deemed unreachable.
Unreachable is, I'm not going to give up on you right now. You don't want my help, but when you are ready for help and you are ready to take that step, I'm here for you. They currently are not in school and they have no will to even talk about school.
But Traver doesn't give up.
They're hard. Sometimes, it's like a slam door in the face, you don't want to give up on them, right? But what can you really do if they're not wanting help?
But when they do, it's all worthwhile. Now she's hoping the province and divisions step up and take the problem more seriously before they lose more students. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
One physician is taking on Manitoba's doctor shortage in a big way. She's pulling almost $750,000 out of her savings. CBC's Ian Fraze finds out why.
Shadi Rezazadeh wants more doctors like her, so she put her money where her mouth is.
If you add them up, it's something around $70,000 per doctor.
Rezazadeh is putting up her own money. She planned to recruit one doctor to her True Care clinic on McPhillips, but thanks to the incentives she's offering, Rezazadeh is bringing over 10 doctors from the United Kingdom who already have the credentials to practice in Canada. They'll work at True Care and the reopened River Grove Medical Clinic on North Main Street. It'll cost her $700,000.
I feel good about it, but I'm drowning financially.
A year ago, Rezazadeh found her recruitment efforts were often futile.
I also had to offer some incentive for them to kind of choose me over 10 other clinics.
So she raised the stakes, a free one-way flight to Winnipeg for the new doctor and their family, a signing bonus of more than $17,000, and for their first month, Rezazadeh pays for their housing and a rental car.
We have a buyer market, seller market. Right now it's a doctor's market.
This just shows perhaps maybe some desperation of some of the members.
Doctors Manitoba isn't surprised at the lengths some private clinic owners are taking.
We need to do better in Doctors Manitoba. The government needs to do better. The public, the system needs to do better.
The health minister will meet with Rezazadeh this week.
I'm very eager to learn about her innovative approach to recruiting doctors to her practice, but to also understand how we can better support her and doctors like her.
The doctors Rezazadeh recruits are signing 3-year contracts. She hopes to recoup her costs with part of the doctor's earnings and set up her patients with the care they need in the long term. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
What a weekend of women's curling we saw in Morden, and what a win for Winnipeg's Caitlin Laws.
Change directions and come across to make the second contact. She was very close. And makes the perfect double kill, an outstanding shot.
That shot in the 9th end gave Laws and her team from Fort Rouge the lead in a tight final against Beth Peterson's squad from Assiniboine Memorial. They'd hang on to win and take the championship 9-8. The Laws team now heads to the National Women's Curling Championship in Calgary as Team Manitoba. 18 teams will compete there, and 4 of them will be from Manitoba. Law's former skip Jennifer Jones will be there, as will defending Canadian champ Carrie Anerson and Kate Cameron, whose rink takes the final wildcard spot based on Curling Canada's ranking system. And maybe by the time they get back from Calgary, we'll all be able to wash our cars without them getting grimy instantly.
On the way home from the car wash,
exactly.
Yeah. Good time to remind you to fill up your washer fluid, Jen.
Yes, very good time.
I topped up mine on the weekend because I ran out.
Yeah, it's just
driving
so
on
messy.
these streets. Yeah,
just so messy.
I'd hold off washing the car if you can, but sometimes it's not a bad idea. Let's take a look at your car wash forecast. Yes. As we get into the day and the rest of the week, really, we're going to be stuck with cars that are looking more like this. And yeah, it's not going to be a great week to wash the car, I don't think. But as we look at the next few days, so here we go. Not good days. We're going to see a lot of melting through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But you know, if you really want to get a layer of dirt and some of that salt off, yeah, probably I would say go in the evenings is your best bet through the next few days, just to get some of that grime off, because I know some of that, especially on your undercarriage, can start to build up and it kind of looks yucky. So here's a look at the upper level atmosphere. We are still in this very mild pocket of air, and it's a very stagnant pocket of air at the surface. So that's what's causing these warm temperatures and the risk of fog once again tonight to kind of stick around. As we get into Wednesday, you can start to see a little bit of that eroding, some cooler temperatures and some cooler nighttime lows start to usher in, but that is very quickly replaced by this mild air once again by the time we get into Friday. And the long-range model is really predicting that this weather is going to stick around at least for the next week or so. So we've seen a little bit of cloud cover across southern Manitoba through today. What's ahead is the exiting of that cloud cover. So we're going to see sunnier skies as we get into the day tomorrow, but we do have a bit of a weather maker on the way for northern Manitoba. So mainly sunny skies for southern Manitoba, but you can see as we get into Wednesday here, we see some snow moving through northern Manitoba, through the Shamattawa-Gillam region, along the Hudson Bay coast. Winds shift around out of the northwest for much of us through the rest of the province, but still temperatures staying fairly warm. Even as we get into Thursday, you can start to see a mix of sun and clouds. In terms of snowfall accumulations, here's what one forecast model is giving for us through northern Manitoba as we get into the later part of Wednesday. Shamattawa looking at about 8 centimeters of snow, generally 5 to 10 through this swath of blue. The Hudson Bay coast about 2 to 5 centimeters coming as we get through the later part of Wednesday and into Thursday. So we're looking at temperature right now of 2 degrees in Winnipeg. Northwest winds at 24. We're starting to see the winds die off a little bit at the moment, and that's what we'll see as we get into the night. Tonight, a -4 this evening. Clear breaks, some fog patches starting to develop once again with the melting we've seen, and the lack of any real wind as we get into the morning hours. So we'll talk about that a bit later in the show, but a clearing sky -1 in Winnipeg first thing in the morning, and then +3 as we get into the afternoon. South winds gusting to 30 as we get into the afternoon. For the next few days, we're looking at temperatures of 4 degrees with gusty northwest winds on Wednesday as that system departs, and then temperatures closer to freezing for Thursday and Friday, Janet, and we're looking at temperatures like that sticking around as we get into next week as well.
Thanks very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
The independent inquiry looking into foreign interference in Canadian elections is now underway. But how much of what the inquiry considers can even be made public? We'll look at that after the break. The independent inquiry looking into foreign interference in Canadian elections is now underway. The focus at this point is on how to deal with the official secrecy surrounding the issue. The first goal is to determine how much of the classified information can be made public. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
The Commission must examine whether China, Russia, or other actors interfered in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections.
Marie-Josée Hogg kicking off a public inquiry that nearly did not happen, about a subject that last year consumed Parliament Hill for months.
The Prime Minister knew that his own Security Committee said Beijing had directed funds to candidates in preceding elections.
Allegations like this surfaced after stories primarily by the Globe and Mail and Global News about China favoring Liberal candidates in the last two federal campaigns, or even about a Chinese diplomat in Canada conducting surveillance on family members of Conservative MP Michael Chong, an outspoken critic of Beijing. The federal government's previous appointee to look into the issue, David Johnston, determined that foreign interference had not threatened the integrity of the elections. He also recommended against holding a public inquiry, stating that too much of the evidence he examined would be classified information. Johnston later resigned from his post amid opposition criticism he was too close to the Prime Minister.
The only reason they're doing the inquiry is because the Conservatives demanded it.
But even as the opposition takes that credit now, the Commission warned some 80% of the documents it has collected so far are classified. Part of the reason foreign spies will be watching closely.
These intelligence agencies have massive data banks of information and have the ability to take the crumbs that come out of this inquiry and combine them with that information and draw conclusions.
And that, in turn, could damage Canadian intelligence gathering, says this former spy.
You may compromise the ability of the service to go on doing that in the future. So that's the challenge. How much of it do you put out? How much of it do you keep secret?
Justice Hogg is also facing criticism from the Conservatives for limiting their participation and from human rights groups for granting politicians they allege have ties to Beijing the right to cross-examine witnesses and view classified documents. The Commission will hear this week from the current head of CSIS and from Canada's Public Safety Minister, all in a bid to figure out how much of this inquiry can indeed be made public. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
MPs are back on Parliament Hill today for the start of a new sitting, and as Olivia Stefanovich reports, the Liberals have a difficult season ahead.
Welcome back. In a place where MPs like to point out their differences, all parties are united by one issue.
You know, for us, the NDP, what is the priority right now is the cost of living.
What's the number one issue on your mind?
Affordability. People are desperate right now.
What they don't agree on, the fix.
In this session of Parliament, we will fight to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
The Conservatives, energized from their widening lead in the polls, continue to blame the governing Liberals for the state of the economy.
It is 2024, and this Prime Minister is still not worth the cost.
It's test time for the federal government, and cabinet ministers are eager to show they're up for the challenge.
Canada needs more student housing, and we're going to help build it.
Announcing low-cost loans to build more student housing.
This is an important policy change. It's not just going to create more affordable places for students to live near where they're going to school. It's also going to relieve pressure on the housing market.
And new measures to relieve that pressure at the grocery aisle, too.
When it comes to the price of food, you can count on us to continue to hold the grocers' feet to the fire.
But the government's dance partner is still unsatisfied.
Our big critique of the Liberal government is they're not focusing on affordability.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is calling for an emergency parliamentary debate on housing and homelessness.
So we're in this crisis, And we're calling for an emergency debate so we can force the government to take this seriously, to see some real action, to tackle what is one of the biggest crises that we're up against of our time right now.
With kitchen table issues front and center, the parties are competing against each other to convince Canadians they're the ones who feel their pain and have the solutions to address it. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Ottawa does plan to delay making medically assisted dying available to individuals whose only medical ailment is mental illness. This comes after a joint parliamentary committee determined the service could not be safely and adequately provided to those patients at this point. But the government insists this expansion will need to be taken down the road.
The issue here is, again, not whether or not somebody, look, we're talking about there are people who have for decades been trapped in mental torture, being in a horrific situation where they have tried everything and exhausted all avenues, and under their own recognizance are saying that they want access to MAID.
People who support the eligibility expansion say excluding people with mental illness from the program amounts to discrimination. Critics say there is no clear way to determine that a person suffering from mental illness is beyond treatment. Thousands of right-wing Israeli activists have pushed for the resettlement of Gaza. At a conference in East Jerusalem, Palestinians and many nations say forcing people out from the territory would be a war crime. Those who support it say it's needed for security. CBC's Chris Brown has the details.
Several thousand activists converged at this conference center in Jerusalem, where the war between Israel and Hamas is seen as an opportunity to claim Gaza for Israeli settlements and push Palestinians out. Actions that would be considered illegal under international law.
The planning has gone well beyond just wishful thinking. They've printed up brochures, and this is a giant map with a new Israeli-settled Gaza full of settlements and new cities. And right there where Gaza City is, under the Star of David, it says the seed of a new Jewish Gaza.
Malkiel Abki brought his son and his automatic weapon.
The only thing that will bring security is Jewish settlements in Gaza, going along with IDF ruling the place.
Some here lived in Gaza once before and dream of returning. Israel dismantled its settlements in 2005 when it withdrew after 38 years of occupation. Officially, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected resettlement in Gaza, but many here believe that will change.
Prime Minister Netanyahu left us an opening for returning to Gaza. He invites this pressure that you see here today.
Several members of the Israeli government, including ministers from Netanyahu's Likud party, were in attendance. His coalition partner, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, gave the keynote address. If you don't want another 7th of October, you have to return home and control the territory, he told the crowd. There is widespread and intense opposition internationally to Israel reoccupying Gaza. Forcibly removing up to 2.5 million Palestinians would be a war crime.
We can no longer look at this as some sort of fringe phenomenon.
Dalia Shandlin is an Israeli-Canadian pollster and political analyst.
I would expect that this government over the next number of years will make efforts to increasingly legitimize the idea of Israel reoccupying the Gaza Strip and rebuilding settlements, and then little by little try to lay the groundwork to do it.
There's been a chorus of international condemnation for the gathering, including from France and the United States and the Palestinian Authority, which called it an endorsement of war crimes. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Some Canadian figure skaters will likely land on the medal podium almost 2 years after competing at the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The Court of Arbitration for Sport today banned Russian Kamila Valieva for 4 years for violating anti-doping rules. Now, she'd won gold in the figure skating team event in 2022, but it was later revealed she'd tested positive for a banned heart medicine. Her disqualification will likely mean that the International Skating Union will move the American team up to the gold medal. Japan could get the silver, and then Canada may move up to take the bronze. Turns out there may be a use for abandoned big box stores. The sport of pickleball is soaring in popularity. Players need a place to play. After the break, we'll show you some creative solutions to come up with space. So have you tried pickleball yet? The sport of pickleball has soared in popularity in recent years. It has players fighting for court time. CBC's Jamie Strachan reports now on a new plan to create more places to play.
I'm trying to put it in that square there.
At this Toronto area pickleball club, space is always at a premium. Too many players and not enough courts. It's housed in an old hockey arena whose full-time tenant is actually a badminton club.
The badminton club takes 3 quarters of the time. We only have 8 to 12 Monday to Friday. And it's really not enough time.
Finding space to play is an issue across the country for a sport that until a few years ago few had even heard of. In 2023, Pickleball Canada estimates about 1 million people played at least once a month.
It's such a social game, and you get to meet people, and it's a very easy game to play. It's an extremely hard game to play well.
The game is like a miniature version of tennis, played with paddles and a harder, less bouncy ball, and has been especially attractive to older athletes, like this 93-year-old club regular.
Every time I hit a nice shot, I feel good about it.
That appeal is driving creative efforts to find more space.
I've never seen a sport sort of enter the cultural conversation like pickleball has in the last couple of years.
At this suburban Toronto mall, a vast retail space that used to house a Target store will soon be home to 9 new pickleball courts. The company behind this one says plans are underway to do the same at other malls in the GTA and Vancouver. The hope? To breathe life into dormant spaces with a new reason to visit the mall.
I think there's definitely a supply and demand opportunity right now. Where are people playing pickleball outside of the YMCAs? We've heard church basements converting. This is just going to fit what people are looking for.
Players won't have club fees, just pay by the hour, and access to a restaurant and bar would be part of the design.
I think a perfect night is having all the courts full. I think the music blasting. I think people laughing.
An emerging sport revitalizing unused space, reaching a new demographic, and giving people more places to play. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Riley Lachuk and I have spent that entire story planning places here in the CBC building where we could all play pickleball. So stay tuned.
Yes.
Fog again tonight.
Yeah, you'd mentioned that you were out driving.
Over the weekend up to Gimli, and it was, you couldn't see.
Yeah.
It was thick.
Certainly going to see some patchy fog in places again tonight. We'll take a look at the visibility as we get into the early morning hours tomorrow. So as you can see, the forecast models here as we advance into the overnight period tonight, really giving us a good chance of some widespread fog once again tonight with the melting snow that we've seen. And of course, the stagnant, not a lot of wind to kind of blow some of that around. So yeah, we're going to see, doesn't mean we're going to see fog everywhere, but certainly means that we do have a risk of some patchy fog as we get into early morning tomorrow. So keep that in mind if your drive involves open highways tomorrow morning. 2 degrees in Steinbach and Selkirk right now. Really most of the capital region at about 2 degrees at the moment, +3. At the Forks downtown, and we're seeing temperatures right around freezing across much of the rest of southern Manitoba. Roblin's at -3 right now, Swan River at -1. Otherwise, the western side of the province at the freezing mark this hour, and into northern Manitoba, -6 into Dooley Lake, 0 in Lynn Lake. Interesting weather on the way for parts of northern Manitoba, which we'll get to in just a moment. So mainly clear sky already over western Manitoba. Still some lingering cloud cover tonight, though, through northwestern Ontario. We're expecting temperatures of -4 and -3. Slim chance of some flurries in the Red Lake region tonight. Mainly cloudy skies. We'll start to see a little bit of clearing, but as I mentioned, fog patches possible through the capital region tonight and into southwestern Manitoba. -9 in Melita, -11 in Brandon. To put it into perspective, -11 is a normal daytime high for the Brandon region for this time of the year. So yeah, we are certainly above seasonal for this time of the year. Rising temperature to +4 by tomorrow morning in Lynn Lake. Gusty southwest winds up to 60 in Churchill with rising temperatures. And then we see the winds really shifting around out of the northwest up to 60. That will drive the temperature down in Churchill to -18 by the afternoon tomorrow. Some showers move into Lynn Lake, 2 degrees tomorrow afternoon, and cloud starts to build into the northeastern part of Manitoba. In the southwest, 4s and 5s for Dauphin and Swan River, 3s under a mainly sunny sky for Melita and Brandon. Keep in mind, we do have a risk of some patchy fog in the morning. Temperatures around 2-3 degrees for southeastern Manitoba as well under a mainly sunny sky. And northwestern Ontario looking at temperatures at or above the freezing mark for tomorrow, 0 in Kenora, +2 in Red Lake. Your 7-day forecast, Janet, is on the way.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
A Winnipeg teen has been named Canada's best shot putter in his age group. When we come back, the students from the CREATE program at Sisler High School share the story of Isaac Anno and how he stays cool under pressure. The story of a Winnipeg teen who's Canada's best shot putter in his age group is the latest in our special series produced by aspiring teen filmmakers. They're students from the Create training program at Sisler High School. Tonight, they share the story of Isaac Anno and how his real strength is how he handles the stress of being the best.
He was in near the 100th percentile, so he was a natural pick for that team.
Years, most outstanding defensive player, and he's been up here a couple times today, Mr. Isaac Anno.
Hi, my name's Isaac, and I play football, and I do track at Sisler High School. And I'm currently the #1 JV shot putter in the nation. I would explain shot put as just really throwing a big metal ball as far as you can. But if I had to compare it to something, it would be like holding a small child.
If you didn't know, Isaac Anno started throwing last year, and a very bright kid, strong, liked throwing shot put, came out throwing about 11 meters, and then over the year, like, he got better and better and better. He was in grade 9 last year, and he won the age class provincials for his age, so he got to go to nationals with the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario Legion team.
And when I got there, it was the stress, like just immediate stress of, well, now I'm here in the big leagues, I guess, with all these other throwers who are just like me, who practice just as much as me, who put in just as much work as me. Some people like to read because it's just relaxing before they go to bed. They can fall asleep immediately. For me, that's what art is. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I'll just draw a little portrait, whether I'm happy or not happy with it. Getting to this level, people expect a certain performance from me every single time in everything. And when I can't reach that sometimes, which will just happen, it's like a much bigger thing for me and a much bigger thing for them because their expectations just got squashed. They expected me to do a lot better than I actually did, right? And for a lot of other students, I'm not going to say that they don't have those expectations. Of course they do, from their parents and their siblings all the time. Everyone has expectations. I think they force you to be the best that you possibly can. And even when you reach that peak, the best that you possibly can be, you always want to be more. That also drove me to make shot put count, because I really want to impress them, I want to impress myself, and I want to impress my parents. That's what was going through my mind. So I just went there thinking about wanting to bring the gold home for my mom and my dad.
No matter whatever decision you make, we're going to support you.
I think we're
That's all I have for him.
Yeah, very, very proud of you.
Yeah.
How you're turning into such a nice young man.
And wanting to show my coach that I have come a long way, and it just all came out with that throw.
Oh my God.
And I won first place.
Yeah, and then, Isaac, hopefully he shocks us again in the future here. There's more to come.
Isaac Anno, someone to watch. That story was produced by Sisler Create students Tristan Legaspi, Ethan Langet, and Vaughn Chung Nung. Still ahead, your daily lift, and Riley Lachuk with our 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Well, here's a quick look at your almanac. We got up to 3 degrees today, so we're about 1.4 degrees off of our record high, which was set back in 1992. Average high -11 for this time of the year. Sunrise 8:06. Sunset almost at 5:30 now. 5:18 is our sunset. So looking at your day planner for tomorrow. So first thing in the morning, we're looking at a -1 under a mainly sunny sky. South winds at 10. By the time we get to noon, expect the temperature around freezing, and -3 with south winds, and +3 that is. By the time we get to the afternoon, +4 on Wednesday. Those winds gusting out of the northwest up to 40, and then temperatures kind of dancing around the freezing mark for the rest of the week, Janet, and no real precipitation in the forecast for the next 7 days either. Well, Winnipeg's wrestling community is pumped over Monday Night Raw moving from cable TV to Netflix next year.
CBC's Gavin Axelrod gathered a reaction from members of Winnipeg Pro Wrestling, and that is tonight's Daily Lift.
It's been called the premier show in wrestling and touted as the longest-running weekly episodic show on cable television. But earlier this week, World Wrestling Entertainment showed where wrestling is headed, and that meant taking its flagship show Monday Night Raw off of cable and onto Netflix around this time next year.
Having the flagship wrestling show with the highest ratings be as a part of a Netflix bundle, it's moving just into where entertainment is going.
Actually, the first time we ever sat down and watched Raw, I think I was 6 years old, and I was staying up late past my bedtime watching, and Chris Jericho cheated to beat John Cena, and I remember my dad had to calm me down. I was crying all night.
I think a lot of people, especially my age, have been cutting the cord and going to streaming services.
My name is Taylor Gibson. I'm known in wrestling as Effie. It's electric, fantastic, forever yours. EFFY. The other name doesn't matter. It doesn't make me any money.
Josh Cheeks Holiday!
Character, Cheeks. Funny nickname that started out as a joke as a referee, and it stuck. Everybody loves it. I'll walk out onto the stage there, and just everybody around here, all 380 people in the crowd, will just be screaming Cheeks, and it's one of the best feelings.
Netflix put up billions of dollars to acquire the rights to Raw. The show has been on the air since 1993 with over 1,000 episodes and draws millions of viewers every week.
I think they're actually getting ahead of the curve for once. I've hosted Twitch shows for the past 4 years, kind of through COVID. I started doing that. I think cable is not really around anymore. Even a lot of the viewership already for WWE, for AEW, comes from the streaming replays, comes from the online replays, comes from people pirating the material.
The future of live sports might be on streaming, and that future may be now. Recently, Peacock had a streaming-only NFL playoff game, and while people did complain, the service saw nearly 3 million signups just to watch that one contest.
My name is Devin Bray. I'm the co-owner and booker and matchmaker of Winnipeg Professional Wrestling. There are several professional wrestling streaming services that already exist, and it can be a little bit niche and for wrestling fans, where something like Netflix, and you go on the trending page and you see 5 wrestlers on a WWE logo, knowing that Raw is live every week. Internationally, it's the whole network. You're going to see a lot of people just clicking on it out of curiosity.
Most of the mainstream wrestling for the past few years, they've had an issue with the COVID stuff. They've had an issue with, people being stuck in place. So the live experience has now become something that I think being able to sell that on streaming is going to help the revenue of a lot of these companies in a big way. People want to see, okay, if it comes to my town, I'd like to be a part of that. I'm sure Netflix is excited that they've got guaranteed people coming in who are going to be watching Monday Night Raw. It's, for some people, the only wrestling that they know or ever will know.
It's so much different than when I first started watching and how I went through high school not really telling anybody I was a big wrestling fan because everyone would look at it like, oh, fake, not real, we don't like it.
1, catch 2. The wrestling scene in Winnipeg is on fire right now, and we're happy to be a small part of that. And we're happy to present this sport that means so much to us in a way that we feel gives it a lot of respect.
Daddy, action, no! Going for the ride! Oh, my goodness.
Incredibly popular, like it's amazing. And it really, like the folks, you may complain and go like wrestling like that is, entertainment, but man, those people are in shape.
We're also online too. On the free CBC Gem app.
So before they wrestle away your cable.
Yeah.
And also YouTube.
Seat 11.